Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the paranormal world of Philip Solomon. This is really our first proper show on a Thursday. It's here every night on YouTube between 7 and 8 every Thursday. And I'll try and come up with some things, all sorts of different things to chat to you about. I often think of the paranormal as being more normal than paranormal, really, but there you go. And I suppose one of the things that many of you will know and associate me with is spiritualism. I'm a spiritualist medium and also a reverend minister in the Christian Spiritualist Society. I have an interview that I'm going to play for you later on. So I've got the audio, but you'll be able to listen to a very, very good friend of mine. And the leader of that particular organisation is the much beloved Lynn Gibb, Lynn Gibb. The guest Swarte. You always have a. I mean, I've only known the lady about 35 years, but never mind. There you go. Lovely lady, our Lynn, and she ordained me a few years ago now, and I always consider I've been given lots of awards and honours in my time, and I'm sure I don't deserve them really, and I never sit very comfortably with them. I always used to say, and I think I'm very honest in saying this, the one thing that I would always have loved to have got would be an MBE, from Queen or King. And I could never understand these people who say, oh, no, they refuse them and they wouldn't want them and they're not going to have them and all stuff like that. I can never, ever really understand that. I think it's one of the greatest honours that you could ever be given, from your king or your queen. I mean, a few years ago, I was invited to go to Buckingham Palace to take tea with the Queen at a royal garden party. Kath, my wife, came as well. And it was a lovely, lovely thing, really, a lovely day. You're all lined up and the Queen comes round and she come right past us. And honestly, my wife will tell you this. I think my wife is the only one. How can I explain this? You're all lined up, but you can take one person with you, but they have to stand behind you. I mean, a lot of the ladies don't be keen on that, but they have to stand behind you. But of course, they speak to or walk past the person who's been invited. But the one person that she did lean around and smile at was my wife. And honestly, she was really chuffed about that because she's not the greatest royalist. She's not the greatest royalist. And I did wonder when I had that invitation if she would even come along. And one lady who used to do a lot of work for me, no longer with us. She was, can I come with you? But oh no, 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 I'm going to that, said Kath, and quite rightly so. But I think that was for a lot of me charity work and things that I've done and over the years. And I was very honoured to receive that. And going back to Lynn Gibb Swart, obviously I was very honoured when she asked me to become a reverend, an ordained reverend minister in that movement that she leads, the Christian Spiritualist Society. And I'll tell you a little bit about Lynn. I've got an interview that, if we have time, a little bit of an interview that I did with Lynn, just the audio. And if I have time, I'll play you part of it. But spiritualism. So what does it mean? Well, I suppose it means really that, your starting point is that you believe in an afterlife and that, your loved ones go on to an higher life in the spirit world, And while I'm on with that, it's another little interesting snippet for you. It's Thursday tonight, but if you are free Sunday afternoon at 6:30 sharp, I shall be taking the divine service at Bilston Christian Spiritualist Church. Bilston is in the West Midlands, and their lovely little church is in Broad Street. If you want a postcode for that, it's WV14 LBH. That's Bilston Christian Spiritualist Church, Broad Street, Bilston. Again, the postcode WV14 OBP. See, even when I'm on video, I'm still going back to my old broadcaster days of having to repeat everything twice to make sure that the listeners get it. But if you could come and see that. It's what we call the divine service, where I'll be speaking a little bit about the philosophy of spiritualism, which is what a lot of you ask me about. What is it? What does it entail? Well, to me, it's a way of life. I think if you're a spiritualist, then it's a way of life that you take on and you take forward. and that's my belief anyway, and that's the way it's been with me. Um, I suppose I was naturally born a medium, really, because my mum was a very, very famous medium locally in the West Midlands and further field. Uh, she was actually a church member, and my grandma was the founder of Darlaston Spiritualist Church, which is down the road from Bilston, actually. And she also had become church medium, and she was given the Long Service Award for her work in spiritualism. My mum, so I always had that influence of my mother, and my dad came into religion later and did a lot of work, good work, working as even as a medium, really. He'd been a professional soldier in his earlier life and came round to. I'll tell you about that another time. So we've only got an hour, and I'm going to try and give you a little bit of information. So if you really want to know what happens at a spiritualist meeting or one of the services, well, I'll give you some idea. I've got it in front of me, so I'll read it for you. For example, what we'll be doing at Bilston on Sunday, and you need to get there for 6 o'clock for a 6:30 start. I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few people don't turn up for that. It's only a small church, but it's a lovely, lovely church. But what happens? Well, you have an order of service, and what that really means is the speaker, the medium, if you like, if you want to call it that. We'll just sort of talk a little bit about things and introduce themselves and things like that. And then usually you'll have what they call the first hymn. And then at most spiritualist churches, they will probably have what they call a minute or 2 minute silence of a sort of a meditation, really, when you think of and send your love and care out to the sick or anyone that's struggling or having problems in life. It's a very nice thing to do and a very important part of the church service. And then you probably have the first hymn, then a prayer, which you usually stand for. Sometimes a second hymn again, which you would stand for. Sometimes a third one. But then you come to the last hymn, and that's what we call the address. And while that's happening, while things are going on, singing the hymns and that, someone will come round and take a plate round for your voluntary offers, donations. Every Christian spiritualist church or any other spiritualist church that you go to, you should know that there is no obligation to give anything. It's a will, it's a guilt. How can I put it? If you feel you'd like to give £1 or even £20, not many ever would, but if you wanted to put £1 on the plate to the collection, then that is always very welcome and received. And then whoever the medium is, like be me on Sunday, we do a demonstration of clairvoyance. And basically what that is really, I will stand up and open myself up to the other side, to spirit, and hope that they will work with me. My guides will bring forward people from the other side who can list the people out there in the congregation. And I'm very lucky, really, because I generally see like a light over the person that I need to go to. So generally I have a very good idea where to go to. Sometimes, depending on the light and the room and all sorts of things, sometimes you have to just rely on going to, where you feel drawn to. I always have a rule which I always go by as well. Some mediums don't do this, but I always do. I think you have to be honest and straightforward and say, so I'm not totally 100%, positive that what I'm giving is exactly for the person that's in front of me. I hope that it is, and that's where the light is or where I felt to go. But you have to understand that sometimes you can get a little confused. And I always say to the people in the congregation, if I'm giving a message and you know that that is clearly should be with you, there's a name there or a surname, a perfect description, and that other person is not quite sure that it's theirs, put your hand up. Put your hand up and call my attention to you. And I know a lot of people in our movement don't like that and don't like think that that you should disturb the medium at work. I don't agree. Don't agree. Pardon me. That is only mineral water, I promise you. they don't agree and feel that, oh, that shouldn't have to happen, But it's the proper way to be. And I have trained literally hundreds of fine mediums and healers over the years, and some of them very, very well known. Some of them, well, title themselves international mediums, and work in different countries and all that sort of stuff. But that's basically what happens. What our religion itself really is based around Christians. You've got the Christian Spiritualist, the greater world Christian Spiritualist churches, and the NSU, which is like still spiritualist, but it's the National Spiritualist Union. And at the end of the day, I think we're all just spiritualists. We're all mediums, and it doesn't matter really which way you follow. But I suppose, in truth, I probably lean towards Christian spiritualism really. But all of us in the religion have what we call the principles, and I'll very quickly read those for you because they have to be sort of kept hard and fast and accepted, if you like. And the first one is one, the fatherhood of God. The principle affirms the belief in one God who is the source of all creation and all loving father of all humanity. Okay. Number two in the principles is the brotherhood of man. The principle emphasizes the interconnectedness of all human beings, recognizing that we are all part of one human family and should treat each other with love and compassion. Number three, that's the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels. And that's a very important one. The principle acknowledges the existence of spirits beyond the physical realm and the possibility of communication between spirits, including those who have passed on, and living humans. It also recognizes the role of angels or guiding spirits in helping humans on their spiritual journey. You often hear mediums talking about their guides, don't you, who come along and help them and work with the physical medium in their work, linking them with spirit. Number four in the principles, the continuous existence of the human soul. This principle affirms the belief that the soul or spirit continues to exist after the death of the physical body. Spiritualists believe that the soul is immortal and continues to evolve and progress in the spirit world. It does, and that's a very important one. I always remember my mother explaining to me something that we call progression. So, if you like, different levels of existence. But I'm going to stick close and very close to just telling you the principles tonight. Number five, personal responsibility, and that's very important, this one. The principle emphasizes the importance of individual accountability for one's thoughts, actions, and choices. Spiritualists believe that each person is responsible for their own spiritual development and for the consequences of their actions. It's one to think about for you, isn't it? Number six in the principles, compensation and retribution hereafter. The principle suggests that good deeds will be rewarded and bad deeds will be met with consequences in the afterlife. However, spiritualism emphasizes that the consequences are not punitive, I should say, but rather opportunities for learning and growth. Improve yourself, if you like, and try to live a better life, a more spiritual life. Right, and the last one of the seven principles is this. Number seven, eternal progress, open to every human soul. The principle highlights the belief that spiritual growth and evolution are ongoing processes that continue throughout eternity. Spiritualists believe that there is no final state of perfection and that all souls have the potential to progress eternally. And that's the seven principles. And you heard me sort of reference that word, progression. I always remember my dear mom saying to me, I've done a lot of work in this world, and I'm hoping that I'll go a little bit higher in the realms. And I was wondering what she meant by that. She said, so I probably won't be coming back to you, son, unless you really needed helping. And I know that you've got some good guides and helpers who will always work with you anyway. And at one time, a lot of people used to continually say this next statement, and to be honest, it used to get on my nerves a bit, really. People used to say to me, "Oh, yeah, yeah, you're a good medium, you're a fantastic medium," but it's easy for you because obviously your mother works with you and helps you, and we all know what a fantastic medium she was and still progresses in the oil life. But she doesn't, and I think they're surprised by that. But I'm not really. She only lived to be 69, my mum did, and she packed an awful lot of goodwill and kindness to others. And anyone who knew my mother, Elsie Saunders, that's my family name. If you say my name, you often say my stage name, but that's my family name. And they will tell you that my mum did all sorts of good work, but was particularly dedicated to spiritualism. And her life really was the little Darliston church, really. She was friends with people like Doris Stokes and Doris Collins, and she could have gone and done all those theatres and done all that work the way I have done, I suppose, and probably even better than me, and probably better. Well, I'm biased, aren't I? But probably even better than the two Dorises who were great, and I often refer to them both as Auntie Doris, and well, they're both Auntie Dorises, wouldn't they? And strangely enough, if I have time to play an interview that I do with one of my with my special guests for this evening, which I'm inserting into this edition if we have the time. Lovely Reverend Lynn Gibb Swarte. She explains that her guide and the person that she works with is Doris Stokes. And isn't that wonderful? I don't think you could have a more marvellous person to work with you and help you with your messages and your general life work than Doris Stokes, because she was a super medium, super great. And I can tell you another little story about me, really. Quite a few years after Doris passed over, her manager got in touch with me to ask me if I would be interested in, fulfilling a role similar to what Doris used to do in all the theatres, but like having a gentleman do it for a change. I'm not going to go into details about that, but for various reasons, my decision was to be that I didn't take that on. And I sometimes regret that, because it would have been nice to have done that. But if you listen to the first program, I've told you quite a bit about the work that I've done and how I've progressed and gone on and done the things that I do. So I'm not going to go on about that anymore. One thing I will say though, if you want to learn about mediumship, get yourself very, very good teaching. Very, very good teaching. Find out if, and most of the churches will have them, find out if they have development circles. And what you really want is a church where it has development classes for beginners, for intermediaries, and for advanced studies of development in sitting in the circle. That's what we call it. We sit all around in a circle, or sometimes some mediums will have you working opposite each other, one to one. I don't really like that. I'm not very keen on that. But what am I to say? Each and every one to their own. But then you progress gradually through those circles and you get into the one for the more advanced. And then, you have the opportunity perhaps to start working as what they call a fledgling, means that you go up on the rostrum, or if they haven't got a rostrum, the front of the church, and you give what you can get as best you can, honest, but always be honest, always straight, only give what you get. But don't be afraid to give what you get. A lot of people tend to fall down on that one because they think, oh, I can't possibly give that message to such and such a person. They won't accept it. And obviously they'll think that, they'll think that it's silly. But I would say you've got to give what you get. And what you want to get then there, if you can, is someone to come along with you and mentor you. We call it mentoring, which means if you can get a very, very experienced medium who will come up on stage with you or sit in the front row and energize towards you and help you as you start to do your work in the early years as a demonstrating medium. And I think that's pretty fair and good advice that I'm giving you. And if that's what you're interested in, you might just be listening to the show because we're talking about spiritualism. What is it and what isn't it? And what isn't it is a very good one to talk about. Nothing at all to do with hocus pocus. None of us fly around the church on broomsticks or cast spells or, have all sorts of different things going on that we dance around. Nothing of that could be further from the truth. The first time you go along to a good spiritualist church, you will say that it's quite serious, but generally very, very friendly. Some more so than others, of course. And there's another very good piece of advice that I always give, and I've taught it all the people that I've taught, whether they've been basic beginners or people who wanted to go on to do stage work, mediumship, in the theatres and things of that nature. And that is, as I say, always give what you get and don't try to embellish it or make it what it isn't. If you can say a gentleman, ask him what his name is, first name and surname. Same thing with a lady. Don't know, you can't always get that. Depends on your development and how strong they come through. Or give a very good demonstration, a very good overview for the person that you're giving the message to of exactly what they look like, and pick up on that sort of stuff and give it to the person that you're giving the message for. Very tall person with you know very very sharp, wearing very horn-rimmed glasses and full beard like me or something, or maybe wears their hair very long like me. Yeah, I'm trying to give you an example, and I'm sure that you're understanding that perfectly well without me going on about it too much. But it is very important to do that, and one step at a time. What you can do, if you're interested in knowing a little bit about everything to do with spiritualism, I wrote a book. I always come up with that one, don't I? I wrote a book, and you can see what that book is. It's called Philip Solomon, The A to Z Spiritualism Dictionary. And you can still get that from all the good booksellers or order it. It was published by Apex Publishing, and I think it was about £10 when it came out a couple of years back, 2 or 3 years back. Yeah, it cost £10. We can sometimes get you a copy. Again, it's £10, but you have to add an extra couple of pound on that to post it out to you. But we're very happy to do that, and it's not that hard to get in touch with me with an email. If you go if you see me on Facebook, if you send a message on there and tell me what you would want, you can see the back of the book, give you all sorts of instructions and things. But right throughout the book, what we strive to do is give you a very simple, short explanation what everything means. Give it couple of a couple of examples. Absent healing. People often ask what absent healing is. So what did I put in the dictionary? Absent healing. This is healing which is sent at a distance, and you can do that, and it definitely works. This is healing which is sent at a distance. A patient does not have to have direct contact with the healer and can be unaware that they are being treated even. The aim is to benefit the receiving individual spiritually, mentally, and physically. Right? Spiritual healers are popular today and receive many, many emails. And I still get letters, from all different parts of the world, still send me letters, which is lovely. Uh, it's just the way you go about it, and requesting for healing for themselves or their families and friends. One of the most respected absent healers and general leaders was Harry Edwards. If you look up Harry Edwards in the dictionary, good friend of my mum's, tell you all about those things. I'm just hoping it's really in any sort of place. For instance, I'm not exactly everything spiritualism, but I've got the word there, diva. We all know what they call. There's one or two people who might describe him or her as divas, mightn't we? But what is the actual sort of definition? Deva, in its simplest Western context, a term in the Hindu religion for a god or godlike figure. I'm not going to go through any more of these, but if you wanted to get a copy of the book, you get in touch with me. It would cost about £12 or £13 to get to you, including postage. or you can use Amazon and things like that. It's called Philip Solomon, and it is as I said, Philip Solomon, the A to Z Spiritualism of Dictionary. Now, do you know who the foreword was for that book? Do you know who wrote the foreword? Well, the foreword for that book was by my very good friend, Dr. Professor Hans Holzer. And, what a wonderful man he was. If you go back, you can still probably get the introduction that we did to this page, and you'll find out about what a wonderful man he was. And his daughter as well, Alexandra Holzer. Great friends, and yeah, really good. So, well, I think that's about it, really. I hope I've given you a bit of a understanding, a bit more sort of understanding, if you like, and understand what we mean by spiritualism and winning a spiritual life. I'll tell you what you often hear people say today. Oh, I think I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Well, that's a pretty vast thing to look into and talk about in an hour show. But I always think when they say that, really, the two are quite really linked together, aren't they, really? If you're living a good life and you care for others and you love the planet, you love everybody on it, and you want peace and love and keep the hope in your heart for life hereafter. For me, I know it's a fact, but that's not the truth for everyone, is it? And yeah, I think if you can find spirituality, that's wonderful. And if it leads you to religion, well, that's a personal pathway that you might enjoy going on to. Well, I'm going to play you now an interview that I did with my good friend, the very Reverend Gibb, Swarte, and I think you'll enjoy this. I really do. I will. If I can get it to play. Always have those problems in the studios, don't you? Bear with me. It's going to work in a minute, I'm sure. It has to. Here we go. My very special guest this evening, Gibb, Swarte. Lynn, it's really good to have you on the show.
I should say thank you for having me, Philip, but that's an old one.
Yes, that's a very old one. Yes, that's a very old one.
And it gets a cheap laugh.
Yes, I know exactly where you're going. Lynn, can you take me back to where you first became, let me say, a spiritualist? I mean, probably had that part of the side of you all your life, but what was your first recognition that you would say you saw yourself as a spiritualist?
I don't know if I saw myself as a spiritualist, but I became aware of being a spiritualist or spiritualist after I was invited to go to Croydon Spiritualist Church, and I had the good fortune, if you can call it that in spiritualist circles, to actually be at a demonstration by the wonderful medium Ivy Scott.
Oh, yes.
Now, I had never, ever seen a medium working before. I had never been in a spiritualist church before. So there I was, completely ingenue with my friend who was a spiritualist. And I listened to Wilfred Watts, who was then the president of the church, making a very good address. And I was really impressed with his philosophy and what he was saying. And then he introduced this lady, and it was Ivy Scott. And I could see that there were sort of shadowy figures on the platform with her.
I'm going to stop you there then, Lynn. So you were already naturally mediumistic then?
Well, yes. But my mother always called it strange. So I was just strange from a little girl. I was strange.
Okay.
Well, she used me to her friends. When she introduced me, she'd say, "This is my daughter, but don't mind anything she says because she's a little strange."
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, there you
So
go.
yeah, so you see, I saw all these shadowy figures, and I knew that they must be speaking to her, but I couldn't hear them. But she obviously could because she was relaying what they said. And there were people, of course, in what I thought of as the audience, of congregation, of course, saying things like "bless you," yes, and everything. I was absolutely fascinated. And when uh, when she was there again the following week, I was asked if I wanted to go again, and I said, "Well, yes." So I went again, and again I saw all these, shadowy figures. But then I saw the shadowy figures of one of my uncles, my dad, and my grandmother.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I got messages from them that were that just blew me away. I mean,
Yeah.
I was struck dumb. I was like the recipient from hell because I could not speak. I was rendered speechless, and all I could do was nod my head. I
Oh,
remember just nodding my head.
I
And when
see.
I left there, to cut a long story short, when I left there, I went home and I told Kathy, of course, my partner, all about it, and she thought I'd got completely bonkers. And I decided I wanted to find out how it was done.
Yes.
I looked in the phone book, that's how long ago it was, and I looked for anything that says spiritualist in it. And it said Spiritualist Association of Great Britain. So will you believe I rang them up and I asked, can you imagine it? The person on the reception desk, listening to this complete idiot, I said, I told them a little story, and I said, I would like to find out if there's any spiritualist places near me. So they were very kind, and they said, yes, there's a spiritualist church at Lewisham, and it's in Boone Street, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I said to Kathy, well, I'm definitely going to go there on my own, not with anybody, not with my friend who had been to Croydon with. I just wanted to go and just see what it was like. So I went down there on the Sunday evening, and blowing me, I got another message. And again, I could see, I was totally amazed. I thought, I'm going to find out how they do this. There's got to be a trick here somewhere. So went out, at the end of the service, that everybody piles out, for a cup of tea, of course, at Lewisham. Croydon wasn't so welcoming in that respect. But Lewisham offered tea and biscuits and stuff afterwards. So I hung about for that. And I thought, I'll find somebody that looks a bit normal to ask about this. And I saw this old chap. Well, I thought he was old. I think he was probably about 60. Oh, he's old enough. So I went up to him and he'd got a cigarette, sort of holding it like army style, so it was hidden as if we didn't know he was smoking in the middle of the foyer.
Yes.
So I thought he looks like a sort of a furtive type. I'll ask him. So I said to him, I'd like to find out more about all this. He went, oh, yeah. So I said, yes. How is it possible to find out? So he said, well, he said, you could come here tomorrow night. He said, there's an open circle. I said, oh, I don't think I like the sound of that, I said. So he went, well, it's like a group where you can, learn about. I said, oh,
Yes.
group. All right, then that's different. Because circles to me was too arty-farty. I hope this is going out after the watershed and I'm allowed to. So on the I went home and I told Kathy all about it. And she thought, that's it. She's lost it completely now. Bearing in mind at the time that I was a sports journalist and very much in the physical world. I was a coach for ice speed skating. I played ice hockey. I wasn't the type to go wandering off into the woods necessarily.
I understand. But let me stop you for a minute there, then, Lee. No, you're fine. But let us move you forward then. I presume you would have done your development work, though it doesn't sound as though you needed very much development, just a bit of fine tuning to do the work. But
that first night, when I turned up there on the Monday night and paid I think it was £1 or something.
yes,
And I went into this room and so on and so forth. Won't bore everybody with the details. And there were about sort of 8 or 9 people sitting there, and the medium who was leading the circle was sitting there and welcoming and so on. And I still thought I might be in the wrong place. It seems strange to refer to establishmentarian when it comes to spiritualism, but I feel that yes, they had a book thick of rules, and and you had to pay an annual sub, and there were different classifications of memberships and so on and so forth. And the point is this, that I found it very difficult when they were saying that if you were a spiritualist, you couldn't be anything else. Now, I was born a Jew, and I considered myself basically Jewish, with a flavour of Christianity thrown in, as it might be, because I mean Jesus was a Jew, as we know, and so
a rabbi, a very radical rabbi, but still a rabbi.
We're talking sort of like, I'm thinking to myself, you can't say to people, you must not be anything else. You can only be a spiritualist and nothing else. So although I was working for the SMU, as they were the owners of Psychic Press and the owners of the Psychic News, and much of their philosophy I would still appreciate. Of course, we all do. The 7 principles that they adhere to solidly. Yes, but you see, before 1978, it used to say with liberty of interpretation. And that, of course, allowed people to practice, their own rights of religion and so on and so forth.
Yes, that's a good point.
Adhering to those 7 principles in essence. Anyway, so the thing is this, that it seemed, a little bit restricting. Now, I was quite happy, while I was editing the newspaper, but then towards the end of my tenure there, in fact, I was becoming more attracted to, shall we say, a more liberal interpretation of spiritualism and a more Christian interpretation of spiritualism. And I felt that I needed to be honest, and I felt that other people needed to be more honest and to be able to be honest.
I'm going to stop you there for a minute, Lynn, because I like that, because undoubtedly my mother was always a Christian spiritualist. Of course, she was president of Darlington, which is an SNU church. Yeah. But she even stood up to Gordon, really, when they were having all that stuff to take all the crosses down and that. My mother was always a Christian spiritualist, and she got the long service award from the SNU, which she was always very proud of. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think the movement because we're getting very close on time now. I want you to talk about what we are now part of, what you are our leader, and I want you to talk about that. I want you to talk for me now about what we are taking forward under your leadership now.
Right. Now, the thing is this, that it's about honesty. What I found was that the majority of spiritualists, and I make no bones about that, the majority of spiritualists that I came into contact with, and I was coming into contact regularly with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of spiritualists, because I was the editor of Psychic News, and people confided in me and were honest with me. What I found was that the majority said they were Christian and they were within the SNU. And I just thought to myself, there's got to be something different here.
Yes.
And eventually, quite a while actually after I left the union, because I was ordained in 2003, which was when I'd already left the SNU as a member. And that was when in the summer of 2003, I left Psychic News. And so therefore I felt I was sort of a free agent. And I wanted to explore my own feelings of wanting to find out more about Jesus and his way of life, and how the early Christians seemed to be so much like spiritualists.
Yes.
And almost identical, in fact. And so therefore I felt very much, and I asked my people upstairs how this should go forward. And they came up with the idea that I should start a new movement, if you like, a new denomination, where people who were Christian, or wanted to follow that spiritual way that Jesus himself had laid down, that they could actually openly say this is what they believed in, that they were Christian spiritualists. Yes. And there have been, and as you know, there's the Greater World Christian Spiritualist Association, we know, and and that's always been Christian. And then of course you've got White Eagle, which is ostensibly a Christian organisation. But the point is this, that I felt very much that people needed a place where they could meet other people of like minds, have the same kind of spiritual pathway they wanted to follow. And this, I felt very much, was to do with Jesus and his teachings and his example. And of course I was at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church for quite a while too, and that influenced me very much, because although they don't say they're a Christian Spiritualist church, they certainly have they were thrown out of the SNU actually because they conduct Holy Communion, for instance.
I believe so, yes.
And the first thing I did when I set up the new Christian Spiritualist Society was to make sure that we had a communion service that was part of our way, part of our movement, part of our denomination. And that if people felt that they wanted to take that communion, they could, and there weren't restrictions on that either. And we like to feel that we are truly Christian in every sense, and not bigoted, or we're not exclusive. We don't say if you're a different kind of Christian to us, you're a different kind of spiritualist to us. No. Coming in. And we're not founded on money. And one of the things I would like to say is that we're also dedicated to genuine mediumship.
Indeed, yes.
To educate the general public, the world's population, about what actual spiritualism is and what good mediumship is, because good mediumship, genuine mediumship, is what spiritualism is founded on.
And of course it is.
That we can also be good Christians. We are.
Now, can I stop you for a moment, Lynn, because of the problems with time? But I will come in now and say to the listeners, I am an ordained Reverend minister in the society.
You are indeed.
Thank you. And what I really need to know, Lynn, people are going to be interested in this interview that you've had with me this evening, and they want to get in touch and know more. So I'm going to need you to sort of tie that together for me and tell me where they can find out about this. And if it's something they want to take forward, join us.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is, of course, we have a website, which is www.newchristianspiritualistsociety.com. We have a Facebook page with the same name. And there is a book that anybody can get from the Amazon, and I think it's only about £1 or something. And it's called The Spiritualist's Handbook, and it's got as much in it as I could cram into 300 and odd pages. It gives you a whole sort of potted history of spiritualism. It tells you all the ins and outs. It features a few prominent spiritualist pioneers. And it also gives you workshops that people can try these developmental workshops for themselves. They're specially designed to be able to be done on your own. And it gives you a rough idea, a guide to some of the most common services that we provide, you know, wedding ceremony, funeral, baptisms, namings, and of course, Holy Communion, and also even our ordination services, because I think that honesty, remember that word honesty. I think, you know, when our Lord said, let your yes be yes and your no be no, he meant, you know, don't practice, you know, deceit. Either, you know, be open, say yes or no. Don't start fiddling about with the truth, you know. And I think that to be honest is the most important thing that spiritualism has to offer. And also to say that we are totally inclusive and we don't believe that you need to believe in Jesus and his saving grace to actually live forever. We know that he never meant for people to think that you had to follow him in order to achieve eternal life. He was actually trying to let people know that there is a spirit life and that you do go on and live in the world of spirit, the heavenly realms. And that is why we will not be accepted by the established Christian church, the Orthodox Church, because they say that if you do not believe in Jesus or follow the Christian pathway, that you will not live forever. In fact, some of them go so far as to say that people are damned if they don't. And we know, as spiritualists, that is not true. We know that and everyone lives forever regardless, but we do say that we are Christians because we accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Saviour and the light of the world.
Absolutely wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I've got to bring that to a close. What a wonderful, wonderful interview. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed interviewing not just the leader of the new Christian Spiritualist Church, but close family friend of mine, and I'm very, very fond of Lynn, and of course a partner, a life partner, Kathy, all good friends of mine. I will apologise that this week we have gone a little bit over the hour, but I thought it'd be nice to give you my sort of handles and what information I could give you about what is spiritualism. And I think Lynn gave a wonderful example with the interview, the audio interview that I did with her. No doubt we'll be having her back in the near future. And but what I would like to emphasise, SNU, Christian, whatever, I think we're all, end of the day, we're all spiritualists. And if we can go forward together and help one another, help to develop one another, then progression will always be a natural thing that will come to each and every one of us. And just remind you again, if you're not doing anything on Sunday, come down to the Bilston Christian Spiritualist Church in Broad Street, Bilston, West Midlands, and I'll be there taking the divine service with a demonstration of mediumship, clairvoyance as part of it. So I'm going to say good night and God bless, and I will see you in 7 days' time. Thank you for joining me this evening.